Dzień dobry Państwu, good morning everyone. Na samym początku ogłoszenie, wersja polska tej debaty dostępna.
In the beginning, I have an announcement. The Polish version of this debate is available at Facebook
and Twitter channels of EURACTIV Poland and on Zoom under the English language as well. Now I will continue in English and let's have a proper start. Welcome to this top-level conference, a new paradigm for plastics and their role in the EU's zero-emission economy plans, organized by EURACTIV Poland under the patronage of the European Commission and the Polish Ministry of Development, Labour and Technology, and in partnership with PlasticsEurope Poland. I am Karolina Zbytniewska and I am the editor-in-chief at EURACTIV Poland, and I will have an honor to chair this important debate about circular and zero-emission economy, about plastic waste-free future, and the interplay of plastics, health, environment, and climate. First, I will have a brief keynote talk with the European Commissioner for the Environment and Oceans and Fisheries, VIRGINIJUS. Straight afterwards, we'll have a deeper look into the important topic of plastics together with our honorable panelists, Member of European Parliament Adam JARUBAS, Virginia JANSSENS, Director at PlasticsEurope, Jean-Marc Simon, Director at Zero Waste Europe, MARLENA from the Polish Ministry of Development, and PAULO LEMOS from the European Commission. Throughout our debate, dear participants, our viewers, please write your questions, preferably in Zoom chat or in comments on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Please make your questions short, simple, and easy to understand also to non-plastic experts by not using just acronyms. Please point at the exact speaker whom you would like to answer it. 6 great panelists and less than 90 minutes to go, so let's get down to business and begin with Mr. Commissioner Virginijus Sinkevicius. I have prepared 2 questions for you. I can add 1 brief Q&A question as it has already appeared actually. So, recent studies show that half of greenhouse gas emissions and more than 90% of biodiversity loss and water stress at the global level come from resource extraction and processing. To make matters worse, material consumption may double in the next 40 years, while global waste will grow by 70% by 2050, unless urgent action is taken. Yet, never before, plastics and their multidimensional impact on the environment and climate has been discussed so loudly as nowadays. Could you tell us what is the most up-to-date European waste legislation that would ensure to solve this burning issue?
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I would probably begin by, of course, looking at recycled content in a bit more detail. This is currently the best alternative feedstock we have, but there are many other advantages. It can make us a lot less dependent on imported natural resources, and that would increase our resilience. The pandemic reminded us how important that could be. With the Single-Use Plastics Directive, the EU now has mandatory targets for recycled plastics and products for the first time. There is an obligation for 25% recycled PET in single-use beverage bottles by 2025 and 30% for all plastic single-use beverage bottles by 2030. The markets have reacted and the price of food-grade recycled PET has gone up. That's a valuable boost to the plastic recycling market in these difficult times. And the bottles are just a start. We will be proposing mandatory recycled plastic content in packaging, in vehicles, and for buildings and constructions. And that too will help the recycled plastic market even more. And of course, we will be taking account of the good work going on inside the industry. And thanks to the Circular Plastics Alliance, The aim is to reach the target of 10 million tons of recycled plastic in the new products placed on the EU market by 2025. I should also mention chemical recycling, which is showing promising signs for future. It could constitute a good complement to mechanical recycling, which still seems to generate higher environmental savings, and it might be a big help in ensuring that all packaging is either recyclable or reusable in economically viable manner by 2030. But the conditions set out in EU legislation need to be respected in full. So use as energy on or conversion into fuel products, for example, doesn't count as recycling. We also need to be sure that chemical recycling really does generate better environmental results than other available options. Even that's just incineration with energy recovery. Let me also briefly, of course, mention important part, packaging. Packaging is one example, you know, of the sector which uses more than 40% of all plastics. So it's key area for action. Of course, we need packaging, and plastic has its functionalities. It facilitates protection, handling, logistics, and presentation of products, including, of course, food. But we know we can do much better at all stages of production and use and disposal. And the packaging legislation was substantially reinforced in 2018 when we raised the recycling targets and streamlined the reporting rules. Member states need to increase their plastic packaging recycling from today's 22.5 to 50% by 2025 and by 55% by 2030. So we also ask member states to take measures to prevent packaging waste from being generated and to promote reusable package. But in 2018, we didn't actually address how to ensure that all packaging becomes recyclable. So now we are reviewing the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive again. And this time we are making a clear link between design and end of life. And that way we can increase and improve the quality of recycling and push for more recycles to be used in packaging and products. And the primary goal, of course, is ensuring that all packaging in the EU becomes reusable or recyclable in an economically valuable manner by 2030. And we also want to create incentive for waste prevention and packaging reuse.
Okay, so the second question, I see that there are a lot of questions coming, let's try to be quick. The potential annual energy savings that could be achieved from recycling all global plastic waste is equivalent to 3.5 billion barrels of oil per year. Not to mention the effect on the carbon footprint. Recycling 1 million tons of plastics is the equivalent of taking 1 million cars off the road. How does the European Commission plan to improve the role of energy efficiency and thus reduce both the material and carbon footprint of products?
Okay, complex question, but as you asked, I will be brief. So we have a very ambitious measure on the way here, the Sustainable Products Initiative. The idea is to reduce waste and increase resource efficiency across the board in all products, and that way we really unleash the potential of circular economy to fight climate change. It will be based around the Eco-Design Directive, but with a substantial broadening of the scope. Until now, Eco-Design has really just concentrated on energy use. We are going to broaden that and address sustainability on a much wider scale. So we will be looking to make products more durable and easier to reuse. They should be easier to upgrade and repair. We have all had the experience of being told a phone or printer can't be mended. Of course, we want that to stop. And of course, it's also about reducing carbon and environmental footprints and making sure there are fewer hazardous chemicals in products so they are easier to recycle. It means a genuine social need. And I think it will be quite popular.
Thank you. So I will ask you several questions and you will just answer the ones that you manage. It's my proposal. Why to set the time frame for all packaging recyclable so late? Why 2030? It's one. Second, is chemical recycled content officially recognized as recycled content or only mechanical one? The other question is EU going to support the harmonization of rules when it comes to the definition of what is recyclable in different countries in Europe? And last but not least, according to scientists, the greenhouse gas emissions from plastics threaten our ability to keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees centigrade. Is the EU, in your view, doing enough? So but maybe we can manage to suit your time frame.
Okay, we have 3 minutes for 4 questions, no?
Yes.
Okay, let's try to be brief.
A good first day warm up.
First of all, on time frame, I think we have to be ambitious, bold, but also realistic of what is achievable. First of all, for industry, we cannot expect that we dictate time frame, goals, and etc. From the top, and expect that it will change overnight. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen this way. Industry needs sufficient investments into it. There are a lot of homework to be done, and of course we have to help and assess them in this transition, because I think all of those ambitious goals, they would be useless in the end of the day if they would be unimplementable or not implemented fully by industry, by member states, on all levels. So here I think the key is, of course, to be realistic. And Commission always, when it comes with any legislation, if it's especially binding legislation, does a proper impact assessment, which then defines the outcome. Speaking about the harmonization across the EU, that's of course a goal, ensuring a level playing field across all the sectors, across member states, and of course definition is going to be key. Now, as if the EU is doing enough, I think the Green Deal was a great step forward. Under the Green Deal, we have a plenty of good initiative, action plans, and most important, I think, that we have a clear plan of how to decarbonize Europe's economy, a clear plan which would help us, according to scientists' recommendation, keep the temperature below. But of course, we have to make sure that it's implemented properly. COVID-19 is a good reminder to all of us that we can't take anything for granted. And of course, we have so much to do in order to improve our crisis management. What can I only add? That climate or biodiversity crisis didn't go anywhere. They are still with us. And of course, we must do utmost to ensure that we don't run out of time. What I'm happy about, that despite the COVID-19 and huge resources mobilized to fight the pandemic, we're still on track with our Green Deal deliverables. And that's, I think, very important. There was one more question, which I missed, I think, the second one. If you could repeat, then I would try to maybe briefly address it.
I think it was, you mean the one about chemically recycled content, if it's officially recognized as recycled content or only mechanical one?
That's a good question, which is a more technical one, and we will need to follow up on that one.
Okay, then I hope that with advancing with implementation of ambitious European Commission plans, as you are saying, the European Commission and the European Union and the world won't run out of time, but we have run out of our time. So thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner, for being with us. It was a real pleasure and honor. Have a good day, and I hope you make all these plans that you outlined to us come true.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to the panel discussion. I would like our honorable panelists to switch on your cameras. So again, with us, Adam JARUBAS, member of the European Parliament at the ENVI Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, Virginia Janssens, Managing Director at PlasticsEurope, Jean-Marc Simon, Director at Zero Waste Europe, MARLENA, Deputy Director at the Department of Innovation and Industrial Policy of the Ministry of Economic Development, Labour and Technology, and last but not least, PAULO LEMOS from the DG Environment of the European Commission. Please, in your answers, could you comment on what Mr. Commissioner and other speakers say? Not extending your time, however, so up to 5 minutes in the first round and up to 3 minutes in the second. I would like to start with Jean-Marc Simon, Director of Zero Waste Europe. And I have a tricky question for starters. Is plastic really a problem? It has good sides and bad sides. Whatever they are, how to make sure it doesn't end up in our forests and oceans?
Yeah, thank you, Carolina, and thanks for the debate. Hello, everyone. And that's a good question to start. Indeed. So is plastic the problem? I think that plastic is just a material with properties that make it different from other materials, and that if we use
Yes, it starts the so-called zombie part of our discussion. I'm sorry, Joan, but you are frozen and we don't hear you. I would like to ask other panelists, am I the only one suffering from not seeing Joan?
I think he's back.
I'm here. But,
you're back.
Yeah.
You're back. If you could switch off your Wi-Fi on your phone, maybe it can help. But otherwise, please continue with answering if plastic is really a problem. I'm sorry, we don't hear Joan. So I will now ask Virginia, and if you could try to switch off all other channels that might eat up your internet connection. And Virginia, you're director at PlasticsEurope. Whatever we say here, when we think of plastics, automatically we think of plastic waste. Not so much of packaging, not so much of protection or preventing food waste. It's an unfair bias, but still the fact is that plastics account for 80–85% of the waste found in the European Union's marine environment. Single-use plastics account for as much as half of this. What are solutions for that?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me well, first of all?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation to this panel. I'm very pleased to be able to highlight some of our challenges and work in progress towards the decarbonization question of today and circularity for plastics. As an industry, let me start with that. We recognize the nature and the scale of the challenges around plastic waste and decarbonization. And I started at PlasticsEurope just over a year now, and now that I'm working directly with the industry, I see an industry that is rightly proud of the versatility and societal benefits of plastics, but equally and critically important, I find, is also an industry that is committed in playing its fair share in solutions to the waste issue, plastic waste issue. And we do this both as an association, as PlasticsEurope, and each of our individual members, whether they are in automotive or health, building and construction, or packaging. And I feel excited about the progress being made and our direction of travel, working towards long-term sustainable changes. And of course, using the science and innovation that is part of our DNA. So you ask about the solutions, and these will not only be incremental changes or solutions for our industry. We are looking at really truly innovative systemic changes with new technologies, for instance, in recycling. Mr. Commissioner SINKEVIČIUS was very pleased. He recognized the opportunities of chemical recycling. This is indeed a technology that we as resin producers are investing in and can play our part in delivering solutions. But of course, in addition to that, it's diversification of feedstocks that our members are looking into. It's entailing new infrastructure projects, new business models, partnering up with our value chain partners, and also looking into material and design science. So the commissioner already stated that we will need, of course, some time for this new innovation cycle to take place, so that the framework of policy, of future policy, will be, of course, very critical to us as well. I spoke about solutions, and of course I started off with what we can do as resin suppliers, but we are of course part of value chains in all our sectors that we are present in. So we are working therefore very closely with value chain partners, but also with policymakers, identifying partnerships, alliances, whatever is needed to make plastics more circular and that we fit into a circular economy in Europe. And I was also pleased to hear the commissioner referring to a very important project for our industry, the Circular Plastics Alliance, where PlasticsEurope is also playing a leading role. We have, I think, about 270 members, whether it's companies directly or associations of the plastics value chain, linked to this project. It was an initiative launched by the Commission. And this is, of course, as mentioned by the Commissioner, to help deliver 10 million tons of recycled content by 2025. So that's a clear target that we are actively working towards. The European Green Deal, very important for our industry. It is used by our member companies as the North Star, if you like, for their investment planning. And that is, of course, linking circularity with the climate efforts that we need to make. The decarbonization, it is fascinating what is happening in this space. On a weekly basis almost, I read about new innovations, whether it's electrification or new and green electricity used on plants of our members, where they team up with other value chain partners. So this is a really interesting space. And of course, in general, plastics can help. It's an enabler to reduce carbon emissions in lighter cars and buildings, enabling development of new renewable technologies, what have you. So this is there's already great efforts made in this space, and more is to come for sure in helping to decarbonize our industry and value chains. For the European Green Deal, of course, I'm also looking at the European Commission and the EU legislators to help and to set the right framework, the right regulatory and policy framework to help us in our transition. We are, as we speak, an industry in transition towards our common objectives. The EU single market, it is critically important. This is something industry raises a lot for very good reason. There was a reference made by this, of the Single-Use Plastics Directive, for instance. The implementation phase, we really need to have a critical eye there, that we make sure that at member state level that there's still the implementation still captures the harmonized and the scale at the European level, to make sure that we advance more speedily and make sure that we can tap into the internal market and not just go being faced with 27 circular economies, if you like, because that will not help the transition in terms of speed, at least. And let me just finish this with echoing what others and also DG Environment, for instance, is saying on plastics. And it is that we need to shift the mindset from plastics as being seen as a cheap throwaway material. It is really, once we recognize the plastic waste is a valuable resource, that we will advance the circularity of plastics, where the investments will also speed up as well. And of course, that in combination with retaining the benefits that plastics have in society, in making our lives easier and more connected, or through electronics and computers, and enabling our mobility. So I'll stop here, please.
Thank you very much. We all hope to make plastic a part of a solution, not of a problem. And as you're saying, it's also a part of that is on our own minds, of having this huge mental change on how to take responsibility. Adam Jarubas, poseł do Parlamentu Europejskiego z Komisji do Spraw Środowiska i Publicznego. Panie pośle, jakie są
Public Health Committee. What are the greatest challenges for the European Union plans towards a circular economy when we speak about the European Commission, when we speak about the objectives and players, business, member states and citizens? The European Parliament, in its report, suggests lots of ambitious activities like binding objectives to limit natural resources use and activities associated with food waste, and expansion of rights to repair products for consumers, consumer products. What are the chances of these being implemented? And on the condition that you are able to fit in your time slot, I'm going to ask about the activities in the pipeline, how they are going to be in line with zero waste, zero emission economy in the years to come. And you've got only 5 minutes. Hello and welcome to all of you. I'd like to express my gratitude for inviting me to this very important debate. As you were saying, Parliament already in February this year accepted its own initiative report, that is the report to Commission's Circular Economy Action Plan. And it has got a number of measures that the Parliament suggests to get involved in, so that the Commission believes it to be the priority. And we speak about eco-projects directive changes and limitation of materials use. So there are also references to other waste streams, including packaging waste and plastics. How much of these postulates will we be able to deliver? This is a horse of a different color. And I believe that we are on the right track to induce changes on Eco-Project Directive. And in my opinion, there is a whole array of themes, but 2 questions are of vital importance. First and foremost, products that are repaired, because single-use products is a very important product, and therefore we need to implement regulations with the respect. And end-of-life product, so artificial shortening of product service life. What is more important for me is the limitation of natural resources use. With great increase of recycling objectives, we can limit the demand for input materials, but there is still an open question: which waste streams should be taken into consideration in order to gain greater efficiency? What needs to be noticed when transforming economy and modernizing economy, we may come across greater demand for specific materials like copper, for example, and recycling level of copper is pretty high, yet copper is important to create engines and motors for electric car fleet. On my side, I proposed to introduce a pilot project for the Parliament and assign resources to what has been indicated in the plan. Secondary Materials Observatory, which is a very important instrument, which may make it possible to collect the data, and this helps to balance the materials recovery and checking whether the materials may not be illegally landfilled. And on the other hand, we can control primary resources demand. Last year, Commission decided this kind of project will be implemented, but in a different way. Therefore, let me seize this opportunity and file my question to the director from the European Commission. What are the future fate of this observatory? Do you know anything about this? There is the action plan of the Commission and Parliament's report. There is a wish list, but there is also the legislation that is going to be enforced just in a short period of time, and we are going to see whether it works or not. When we look at packaging plastic, there are two parallel regulations in place, so to speak, because the new tax on non-recyclable plastics in packaging is becoming obligatory. This tax has been designed as an incentive for member states to fulfill plastic recycling objectives much faster. Now we have a leap increase from 25% to 2025 plan at the level of 50% and 55% in 2030. So this is a quantum leap. Let me give an example in Poland. In 2018, only 32% of plastics were recycled in Poland. Enough to meet the objectives, but you need lots of effort to meet these objectives. For less well-off countries, there is a discount included. So each member state has got a choice whether they are going to pay the tax on their own or they're going to shift the tax on those that produce or introduce the packaging into the market. Initially, the market was supposed to be attached to the industry, but at the same time the money was supposed to return to a special fund that is designed to support new recycling technologies. All in all, it was not implemented. There is a second element. Single-use plastics law that was accepted in 2019. We are going to see the results of this implementation in the nearest future. There are lots of challenges, but we need to remember that some steps have already been made. We need to wait some time to see the results. In legislation, we've got the objectives, which I find ambitious, yet we need to wait for the results to be implemented. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before the floor goes to aforementioned Paul LEMOS, the floor goes to MARLENA TRYKA of the Ministry of Development, because I'm going to focus on Poland. Poland being a member state of the European Union that is going to deliver the very ambitious plans of the European Commission, will get extra motivation from the Parliament to be even more active, so we'll be the ones to implement. Marlena, what's the Ministry's perception of these ambitious goals in the context of EU directive on single-use plastics, the SUP directive, in terms of its implementation? Do you think Poland needs any kind of support in this respect? Does Poland support all proposed solutions? What is particularly difficult or problematic? Thank you very much, and hello and welcome to all of you who have joined the debate today. I'd like to express my gratitude for this very important question. This is a very important question from the point of view of Poland's industry. Us, the Ministry of Development, is responsible for economy, and we do take care of Poland's industry. At the same time, we are responsible for broadly defined circular economy in Poland, and we try to assume a holistic, broad scope perspective in our ministry. We do take into consideration all loops of the chain or circular economy loops, as we call it. Speaking about the directive, the SUP directive, the intended results of the directive and its results, limitation of plastics use, the main objectives of the directives are accepted and promoted by us. We do care about the limitation of use of plastics. We want to introduce circular economy to the greatest possible extent. And all these aspects are very much wanted and crucial. Speaking about the directive itself and some kind of negatives, or better to say, concerns filed by the industry, we do realize they are here because it has been quite a turbulent time for industry as the result of COVID pandemics and implementation of products, process innovations or investments into the companies have been put on hold for the last 12 months because of obvious reason, because they wanted to wait through this very difficult time and they observed the employment policy rather than a development policy. However, having been engaged in conversations with entrepreneurs, we have found out that the question that they indicate is the alignment time for the industry, because time-consuming and cost-consuming activity as far as the changes are concerned, because they touch upon their business models too. So I'd like to pay kudos to the European Commission. Companies are waiting for detailed indicators regarding the products that are covered by the scope of the directive. Inter alia, we speak about cosmetics and beauty industry and other business sectors that filed their concern. They believe there is not enough information at this phase, and therefore they cannot meet the requirements fully, and the requirements will be obligatory pretty soon. Some semi-products they need to produce particular finished products that go to consumers are referred to, like moisturized tissues or Kleenex-type tissues, or fibers that are used for production of the above machines might be the subject of executive regulations. And yes, indeed, companies have great concerns. These are rooted into their fears of possibility to align with the directive. What we like most when talking to the industry and companies, the industry has got a very responsible attitude and they do understand the needs related to the new directive. From the point of view of ministry, I can say that our cooperation with the industry is seamless and there's mutual understanding of all the requirements, social, environmental questions. And I've got a feeling that we all do understand that circular economy introduction, green solutions in companies is the common denominator for all of us. This is our joint objective. But we also believe that this process is also, it's not super easy to carry out. So I believe what we are focusing on is to indicate all these problematic issues, address them, discuss with the companies and solve the questions. And I do hope that we are going to be efficient in doing so and we'll be able to combat all the difficulties and will successfully implement all the requirements associated with the directive.
Thank you very much. Because you somehow mentioned the commissioner, because maybe we do not have adequate range of solutions to follow European Union guidelines. I would like also ask some questions to you so that you can answer them in another round. The first question is, what is happening with the caution system in Poland? Because we are called to include bottles in the system. And in English,
initiative in the circular economy. Does this fit in with the EU's new Green Deal, or does Poland need more support from the EU to help decarbonize? Okej, dużo zapowiadam przedstawiciela Komisji Europejskiej, to Paulo Lemos.
Paulo Lemos.
Your time for you. So please, if you could refer to what other panelists were saying. So one point of also by Adam JARUBAS. What is the status of the previously planned market observatory for key secondary materials? What our director from the ministry was saying about fears from the industry in Poland due to the lack of necessary information on what to adapt to. But above all, my question to you. The EU Packaging Directive entered into force for the first time in 1994. Throughout these 26 years, it went through some changes, including the 2015 amendment to reduce the consumption of lightweight plastic carrier bags. Now the Circular Economy Plan, as one of the focal points of the European Green Deal, the packaging industry will surely experience revolutionary changes. The EU holds till September 2021 open public consultation on the review of packaging requirements and other measures to prevent packaging waste. Could you shed a bit of light on what is it to be expected in terms of packaging?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and let me first reply to the questions before I forget. In terms of the observatory for the vital resources, indeed is foreseen in the Circular Economy Action Plan. We are seeing what are other initiatives already taking place in the framework of, for instance, the European Environmental Agency and also Joint Research Center not to have duplications. This year it's a very complicated year because we have a lot to deliver in terms of the implementation of the Circular Economy Action Plan. I just mentioned two very important instruments like the Sustainable Product Initiative and also the Green Claims Initiative that are wider but also have impacts on plastics, but also on resource consumption, because especially this Sustainable Product Initiative, the main objective is to reduce the consumption of resources by promoting durability, repairability, reuse of the products. So we hope soon to implement it, but definitely not in 2021. In terms of the involvement of the stakeholders, indeed, as far as I understood, the question was related mostly with the Single-Use Plastic Directive and also the microplastic restriction proposed by ECHA. These documents are not yet definitive, but we are following, let's say, the rules to hear the stakeholders, and the stakeholders who are largely involved in the discussions on the restriction, but also on discussions on the guidelines for the Single-Use Plastic Directive. And that's one reason, because we don't have a command control structure, we have a participated structure. We wanted that everybody would be involved, and in the beginning when the directive was discussed, we warned the council, but also the parliament, that 1 year that they were giving us to come up with these guidelines was very short. but we hope soon, and when I say soon, probably next month, to come out with the guidelines on single-use plastics, so the industry will be more, for them will be more clear what is in and what is out. But well, the basic rules are there, and we see already either from the public, but also from industry, a shifting to products that are out of the scope of the directive. Concerning the packaging directive, the main focus behind the revision of the packaging directive is the plastic strategy, the vision that the plastic strategy proposed. On one side, that all packaging placed on the market by 2030 should be recyclable or reusable, but also the question of recycled content and the need to increase the demand for recycled content. So these two areas are important, but the third area that I would also mention is the question of avoiding over-packaging and reducing the consumption of resources by the packaging industry, because it's also related with the sustainable product initiative that we are proposing, meaning to reduce the consumption and demand for resources and to avoid unnecessary packaging. So these three areas are the main areas that are being discussed. Obviously, the question of recyclability is very important because what is recyclable is a big discussion. What is cost effectively recycled? On this, we have the question of chemical recycling also, if we could count with chemical recycling or not. But we are still discussing that. So for the moment, first, the chemical recycling is a concept that is very wide. We need to know exactly where the industry wants to go, because most of the projects that the industry has are pilot projects on chemical recycling. So we need to know, but at the same time, we are doing an internal reflection on in what conditions chemical recycling could be accepted as recycling to count for the objectives of the packaging industry, but much others like recycled content, but also this important issue that was referred by our commissioner, but also by Monsieur Adam JARUBAS, of the tax on packaging, the levy on packaging. We don't call it tax, because the more the member states recycle packaging, the less they pay. And all these, well, the targets for packaging and also the levy are pressing packaging to be more recyclable and to include more recycled content.
Thank you very much, Paula. I will just read out the question that was asked to all the panelists. So whomever of you will want to answer it in your round, please do. So how do you see each EU member state implementing and collecting the 800 euro per ton charge on non-recyclable plastic packaging waste, which came into effect in January? And when do you expect to see the first round of charges being collected? But now I would like to start the second round. I'm sorry, as far as I know, Jean-Marc Simon from Zero Waste Europe is still experiencing problems. So, Jean, when you are successfully done with the troubles, please just let me know and I will come back to you with my questions. But now I would like to start the second round, and please stick to up to 3 minutes, preferably 2 minutes time. First off to Virginia Janssens. If you would like to first briefly comment on Paulo's LEMOS take on packaging, plus a question dedicated for you. Within the industry, is there a longer term vision of plastics, let's say for the next 20-30 years? What would be the goals of European and global plastics industry leaders in such a perspective in relation to the role of plastics in sustainable development?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Paulo, thank you for your comments. Let me say very clearly as well from Plastics Europe and our members, we support the Commission's objectives. We I think we engage regularly, excuse me, my English, with your services on making sure that we can support in the recyclability, making packaging recyclable by 2030. So there's lots of investments from our side and with our value chain partners to make sure that this is a reality. You also refer to the plastic strategy, which we also fully support as PlasticsEurope. So we are looking forward, of course. Now it's about, the devil is in the detail. The objectives are supported. The high lines in terms of the timings and framing is supported. So how can we now make this a reality as soon as possible? So we are in contact, of course, openly with your services to discuss on those points. And it will be important for us. From our side, it's innovation that is needed and investments, and we are relying on the Commission and the EU legislators to help that we can have a framework, a legislative framework that can actually stimulate the new business models, and making sure as well that we've got the timing right, and realizing the breadth of innovation that is needed. So I'm talking about full innovation cycles and in a transitioning industry. So exciting times. We need to make sure with circularity and climate that we aim for net environmental benefits, right? If we do something on circularity, it needs to add up with climate and vice versa. So that is also something that we are working with the Commission. You raised a good point on chemical recycling. There, indeed, the detail is not fully captured yet. We are working on a weekly basis. We are in contact as well with you, where we also identify with our members on capacity, where are we going in 2025, 2030, because indeed, if we want recycled content and we want to reach the 10 million tons in the exercise of the Circular Plastics Alliance, chemical recycling will also play a part in that, complementary to mechanical recycling. And of course, to the point that the Commissioner made earlier, energy to waste is not, of course, considered recycling, also not in the chemical recycling definition. So let us be very clear on that. On the second question, Carolina, that was about the long-term vision of the industry. It's
exactly 20, 30 years perspective.
Yeah. I can give a very short answer to that, or a longer one, but we are, as said, we are in transition. So we are revisiting henceforth our long-term vision. That is actually a project we have started last year, and we have initiated, let's call it a listening tour, engaging with our critical stakeholders. We are receiving critical feedback, constructive feedback, also things, of course, that are more uncomfortable to hear for the industry, but we need those inputs to make sure that we integrate that in our long-term vision and are actually delivering solutions to the societal issues around plastic waste, and helping the decarbonization objective. So this is an exercise we're currently doing, and of course it goes beyond. It's not, circular economy is not only recycling and plastics packaging. It's in all sectors. It is on what can we do more on reuse and new business models, design. Also, of course, sustainable production and consumption is also broader in the sense of how can we deliver our products to consumers. So lots of challenges there as well, but also opportunities. There are areas where we as resin producers can work on ourselves, but for many areas we will have to also partner up with our value chain partners, and critically important are the Commission and European Parliament and member states. So you'll have to watch this space from PlasticsEurope. It's ongoing, but it's certainly something where we will integrate a broader picture of the European Green Deal, and making sure that this is our North Star, if you like, in terms of providing the investments and the pace. We are looking at a time frame 2040 for the long-term vision, but also realizing what can we do faster in 2025 to 2030 and onwards.
Thank you very much for that, Virginia. And now next to Adam JARUBAS. Jak już wspomniałam w rozmowie z komisarzem Sinkevičiusem,
As I have mentioned in my discussions with Mr. Sinkevicius, yearly production of waste may increase even by 70% to 2025. What is the importance for environment protection of the implementation of rules of reduction of use and recycling at the European Union level? Is this effort enough from global point of view? The question may be whether we can move European Union regulations to global level. European Union today has the highest standards concerning waste management economy. We can even provide a certain picture showing that it is not the European Union that is responsible for creating the huge waste on the oceans, and it's not the European Union waste that pollutes the Mediterranean Sea most. The Single-Use Plastics Directive can help, but will not solve the situation. Of course, we can always do more, but for achieving the global effect, comparing it to the climatic diplomacy, we need to have a good practices export to countries which pollute most the world. It is not the mainstream discourse right now, but maybe we should think about having good practices within trade contracts with European Union partners, or maybe we could think about similar mechanism similar to the carbon border mechanism, for example, in the shape of broadened responsibility of importers, expanded responsibility. We have to convince our trade partners from whom we import products to adopt their exported products to the European markets, to incorporate the waste and recyclability standards of the European Union. We also have to stop exporting waste outside the European Union, even though the waste economy is costly. We should take responsibility for our own waste. We shouldn't wait for the third countries to prohibit importing waste from the European Union, as China did recently. It is to be a tax paid by all the member states. Well, it's also the choice of member states. We can put the tax of the importers. It is possible within the expanded responsibility of the procedure. I don't know what is the solution for the Polish government. Maybe the director is more competent in this respect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So let's have another try with Jean-Marc from Zero Waste Europe. We can see you well. So coming back to my first question, is plastic really a problem, and how to avoid it ending up in our forests and oceans? So that's for the first one. Maybe when you answer it briefly, I will ask you my second question.
Thank you. And I hope it works now. It's better.
I think so, yes.
Good. Apologies for this. So I think the first question has been answered already by the other speakers. Plastic is just a material, and we can use it right or we can use it wrong. The question is actually what is the use we want to give to plastic. I think plastic, as it has been raised, has lots of environmental benefits if you use it right, because it's lightweight. But this, it also has the challenge of being filled with additives, for example, with chemical additives that are having an impact on our health. And this impact is today not well understood. I think that we just know that this impact is there, and there's more and more studies actually showing the impact that that has. From a resource efficiency perspective as well, it is clear that we need to broaden the scope in a sense that plastic is a durable material that should be used for a lot longer and at the end of the day be recycled. What has been happening the last decades is that this plastic is mostly not collected and not recycled, ends up in the environment, in our bodies, and I agree that I think that all of the speakers agree that this is not the place it should end up. So how do we stop this from happening? I think that the systems we have right now in Europe that are based on the producers paying a fee to municipalities and other operators to collect this packaging together with other packaging has its limitations. We have seen how around 1/3 of the packaging is collected and even less is recycled. That needs to be improved. And in this perspective, the proposal from the Commission to have 90% separate collection targets of plastic waste goes in the right direction. What this means is that in practice, we are going to be implementing deposit and refund systems for packaging in Europe. And I think there, again, one challenge is to look at this not from the perspective of plastic, which of course the sub-directive has tackled the issue from the problem of plastic. But if we want to address the issue of packaging, we should address packaging as a whole. So we should have DRS systems all across Europe that are non-material specific, that actually include all the materials and as many product categories as possible. Because what is proven today is that if the citizen is given the possibility to have an economic incentives and the facility to bring back the packaging, they will actually bring it back. It will not end up in the environment, which is, I guess, what we all want. A challenge as well is how do we make sure that we move away from the linear mindset? When we talk recycling, recycling is great, but it's still the linear mindset. It's a product that it could last hundreds of years and we're going to use for a few minutes and then recycle it. From a circular perspective, this is a bad management of resources. And for that, I think that there's a big challenge ahead of us of actually developing a whole framework on actually how to reuse packaging. It's not that long ago that most of the packaging was reusable. And there's a big room for improvement so that not only we stop plastic pollution, but we also increase resource efficiency by making sure that packaging is reused as many times as possible. And from that perspective, actually developing targets, standards, reducing also resource use is important. So I think that we need to put in the scenario, in the scope, the fact that in the future we should be using less plastic. We should be using plastic a lot better, but a lot less, because if we are going to be reusing a bottle 20, 30, 40 times, this is 30 bottles, 40 bottles that we don't need to produce and we don't need to collect and we don't need to recycle. So actually that should result in an absolute reduction in the plastic use. And I think this is a discussion we should have. And lastly, we have talked a lot about the environmental impact of plastic, but I would argue that this is not the only parameter we should enter in the equation. I mean, there's a whole chemical recycling strategy the whole chemicals strategy of that this environment has published. And actually we need to marry the environmental impact of plastic with the health impact of plastic with also the resource efficiency, which is not only carbon emissions, it goes beyond that. And on that, I think that's a challenge.
Okay, now the second round question to you, which will be a triple one because I see also Q&A question to you. So coming back to the implementation of the single-use plastics directive that you've already also mentioned, what are the good practices of how to transpose it, ones that we could respect in Poland and that could be used in formulating the implementation guidelines? So it's good practices, and actually one question from Q&A is also about good practices, but as regards implementation of zero waste strategies in Europe that could possibly inspire other regions. And already the third question, what is your view on the plastic substitution and exchanging it for other materials, like, for example, Tetra Pak? 3-in-1.
3-in-1. So let me start with the last one. Again, the material substitution can play a role, but it's not going to be the solution. We know that, for example, Tetra Pak is less recycled than plastic, but also plastic is less recycled than metal or than glass, but that's not the only consideration. Again, I think that more than material substitution, we need to be thinking as much as possible in terms of system substitution and trying to hit this this triple bottom line. That it needs to be good for the environment, it needs to be good for the health, and it needs to be good also for the social agenda and create jobs. So from that perspective, I would say, yeah, let's look long term. We see lots of plastic actually being replaced with other alternatives that sometimes are not better for the environment. And that should also concern us. And I think it's also something that the Commission should consider because we need a packaging holistic view instead of only addressing plastic as a problem, which is already something. On the second question on good practices on transposition, I think that most countries are still working on it. We particularly like the law that was passed in the Balearic Islands in the sense of actually restricting the single-use plastic items that have alternatives. And I think they're doing a fantastic job in there. But it's worth mentioning that, for example, a big part of this implementation is about replacing single-use containers with reusable containers for the business-to-business sector, for example. And there, I think it sends really the right precedent. And the last question about zero waste solutions, we just launched actually a certification system for cities across Europe. This is actually looking at the holistic picture from a local perspective of what does it take to move towards zero waste. So I would encourage those of you who want to learn more to go to zerowastecities.eu, and there you can find a lot of information on this topic.
Thank you very much, Joan. Now I would like to come back to Poland. So Marlena, pani Marlena Tryka, wiele pytań do pani, które są też
There's a whole lot of questions that go to you, Marlena Tryka. The same questions go to EMP Adam JARUBAS. So let me 2 more questions. Why do you think Poland invests in waste incineration against zero neutrality? And the other question,
the increasing of recycling obligation for ELT, end-of-life tires, from current 15% until 50%, and still lets it burn down in the cement kiln. Dużo tutaj słyszę emocji.
So I can see the questions are packed with emotions, and on top of that, I'm going to ask you my question. That is one of the ways to change of the paradigm for the production and use of plastics, lie in innovations and new technologies. If so, how does the Ministry of Environment support the activities who are designed to deliver better objectives of sustainable development? Sustainable development goals that were published by United Nations, including the 12th goal, responsible consumption and production. Thank you very much. I'll try to answer the editor's question, and whilst answering this question, I'll try to answer other questions that I get in a chat box. There are lots of them. So if I'm unable to answer the questions in the course of the conference, you're more than welcome to get in touch with me or with my ministry, and we can continue our discussion on the topic and we can exchange the information. And now speaking about innovations, whose objective is to meet sustainable development goals. Indeed, the name of the department I work in indicates that innovations are a very important element. Also in circular economy context, this is in the center of our interest. And I believe that we try to do much with this respect. First and foremost, I believe that you've heard about this a lot. 2019, we accepted the circular economy map. It is going to be a guideline or set of indicators of activities designed to help Poland to switch from resource use economy to circular economy, linear to circular. So what is worth mentioning, this circular economy map includes recommendations on production and consumption in a responsible way, because the activities need to be attached to every phase of the production process, starting from resource material acquisition, prospering production, consumption, and recycling at the end of the day. So we have noticed the activities that are needed, some of the things that have already been happening. Speaking about on a more concrete note, what do we do? What do we want to do? Speaking about the circular economy map, the activities that we have started, national smart specialization, whose objective is to identify different needs areas for research and development within the scope of circular economy as such. And we are going to create the body that is going to be called Green Innovations Hub. This is modeled on Digital Innovation Hub. In case of digital economy, we can see a very important role attached to entrepreneur support. So we are going to start with a pilot project. We are going to model the circular economy body to the aforementioned one. The name will be Green Innovation Hub. The hub's activity is to assist entrepreneurs in combating the carbon footprint, whatever is put into the economy, environment. A very important topic that is discussed on the European Union arena and companies' national recovery plan should include these activities related to circular economy. This will be an uptake, continuation, and complementary activities to circular economy as such. We are in the period of public consultation, so all the remarks and observations from you are more than welcome. What do we want to do? We want to make it possible for companies to introduce innovations, be it product innovation or product innovation, process innovation, and implement advisory mechanisms so that they can make the best of. And also material innovation, semi-products that are used to produce finished products, and testing different pools of raw materials. So that national recovery plan includes these activities. Circular economy has got one more thing worth mentioning. It is aligned with our ministry's activities. IPCEI mechanism and measures of European Union scale. Poland has been a very active player of this process. As of today, we have a very important element that focuses on secondary materials recovery. We are speaking about batteries. So we are very happy that Poland has got an increasing potential of recovery and recycling of second-hand batteries. These are critical raw materials that we need to import from other countries. They are very important for production of electric vehicles in the future, and electric vehicles as such will render support for us to become climatically neutral. So innovations, circular economy, and all these aspects, I believe I have indicated the activities that the question was about. Speaking about the questions from the chat, let me have a look. Why does Poland invest in waste incineration? end-of-life tires? Why do we block the increased demands in this respect? And one more question from the chat, full of emotions. Why doesn't Poland shift costs on plastic producers rather than taxpayers who never, even those who never used single-use products, single-use packagings? So the question related to plastics tax. So let me start by a word of introduction that will answer some of the questions, but please be brief and concrete, because we are running out of time and we have one more person who is willing to take the floor. There was the question of plastic tax and money that you get in return for the secondary materials. The extended producer's responsibility, the work is underway. It's in the hands of the Ministry of Climate and Environment. We want to be an active part of these works. We want this system of quotas to be a part of extended responsibility. So what is going on? Let me answer this way. Plastics tax, lots of questions. As EMP said, by principle, plastic tax is attached to the member state's budget. It's a kind of contribution that you pay as a member state. We have not been informed about the activities to create plans to shift these onto consumers or producers. So I hope that I have dispelled some of the fears. And we've got the information from the Ministry of Finance, and according to this information as of today, this tax will be paid as a part of Poland's contribution to EU budget. Incineration plants, yes, it is a very difficult and a hot topic. Much to be done here. We need to bear in mind that we cannot evade the question that there is waste problem, and all activities associated with what has been mentioned, extended producers' responsibility and work on plastics. These are difficult. It should be effective. This will be a model system. I hope we'll make it effective and efficient as the result of all the activities that we've been carrying out. There are some things to do. We do not want to evade this or avoid this. And I hope that all the aspects that have been mentioned will be implemented in an efficient way, and therefore will be able to use as much as secondary materials as possible. So punchline, and as I said before, I'm open for questions. Get in touch with me at the ministry. Thank you very much.
Paulo Lemos from European Commission. My question, you are ending the second round, and despite I will ask you a lot of questions, please try to stick really to 3 minutes. So staying with innovation on a global level, only 6% of products contain recycled content. Why plastics are some of the least recycled materials in our economy, despite being so widely used? Another question, microplastic pollution has contaminated the whole planet. It is also being consumed and inhaled by people, and the health impacts are as yet unknown. What is the current state of policy in the EU in terms of banning the use of microplastics in products such as cosmetics or detergents? And it's a question to all panelists. Why are the producers which cause all the garbage not fined for the cleanups for the rivers and oceans worldwide to end this ecocide? For example, Coca-Cola produces PET bottles since the 90s, but never had to pay.
Well, big questions, but starting by non-recycle, well, why the plastics are not so recycled as other materials? Some of the reasons were already given here. The plastic is considered a very cheap product, and it's if you go to a cafe and you can take three or two packs and take them without paying, or before with the plastic bags was the same. You could go to a supermarket and bring 10 plastic bags for free. So it's one of the reasons, but other reasons is the recyclability also, because there are some plastics that are difficult to recycle for different reasons. Some were already mentioned, like the chemical content that does not allow, also because of the type of polymer that is difficult to recycle, and also the demand side, meaning there is less demand for recycled plastic that there is for other products. That's why the plastic strategy set this goal of recycled content. We are working with the industry also to see if we have to put more mandatory targets for recycled content in other products besides bottles, as was here referred. The Circular Economy Action Plan raises that possibility. We'll see. It will depend also on the work of the Circular Plastic Alliance. So there are many different reasons for plastics not being so recycled, indeed. And I think somebody already referred this. A third, more or less, of the plastics are collected for recycling, but that does not mean they are really recycled, because a part still is lost in the process of recycling. So a lot to do. In terms of microplastics, indeed, since the plastic strategy was launched, we initiated a process in the chemical agency in order to restrict the use of plastic, intentionally added plastics in some products. That it will include paints, detergents, cosmetics, for instance, but more products are foreseen. And this restriction has, there is a procedure that has to be observed, is now in consultation, and we hope to have a restriction by next year. But we are also working on the other sources of microplastics that are even bigger sources. There is tires, textiles, and pellets. And we hope to come out with proposals next year for some measures to address this along the value chain. The third question was, sorry?
The third question was about the producers being fined for cleanups.
Okay, yeah. One of the innovations of the Single-Use Plastic Directive is precisely that. As you know, the extended producer responsibility already exists, but the extended producer responsibility more or less stops when in the recycling process. So the costs of littering are not included in the fees that the companies pay when they put their products on the market. According with the directive, the costs of littering will be included in this extended producer responsibility for the most littered items. So we are in the work of calculating what are the costs, and then the EPRs will have to add an additional fee for this cost. So that's the idea behind also the extended producer responsibility in the Single-Use Plastic Directive.
Thank you very much, Paulo. We are coming close to a close. So now the final round. I would like all the panelists to stick to the time. We don't have much of it, so around 1 minute, please. I will ask you the lead questions, but please at the same time consider 1 or 2 recommendations on how your institution can make the world with plastics more sustainable, plus what would you expect from other panelists. So starting with Adam Jarubas, W polskich lasach pełno śmieci. Nie tylko tworzywa sztuczne.
Polish forests are littered with waste. We have glass, we have plastics, it's dirt and shame, irrespective of what materials became the waste. It's not only plastics. How European Parliament can address this issue to mobilize our citizens to take responsibility for the surrounding world? It is a very important question. The European Parliament cannot oblige citizens not to litter the environment. It can only expect from the European Commission to develop legislation that would impose certain duties of member states. We have certain examples here. For example, the law concerning single-use plastics. It is being launched. It's going to become effective soon, and we will be able to see and follow the implementation of this directive. In Poland, we have low level of waste production, but we have a huge level in managing it. The whole Europe is investing in waste management, in waste recycling, and in Poland, my impression is that the whole waste problem has been moved on to self-governments, to local governments without any additional funding. Local governments can only partially deal with the increasing waste. In many cities presently, we can see that the burden is bigger than in Belgium. And we can see that it is not a good path to follow. It is not the cause for which we still have this illegal landfills, illegal waste. We can either increase funding from the state budget, or we can expand the financing for waste management within the producer's responsibility. I would like to draw your attention to one thing. The recycling of batteries is a huge challenge and serious challenge. In the European Union, we have various initiatives like Alliance Battery, and one of the priorities is to develop green batteries that will be fully recyclable, or more responsible, more sustainable way of recycling the batteries which are already in the market. First of all, we will prolong the life cycle of batteries, for example, prolong the life cycle of car batteries for use for the industrial or household energy storage. Jean-Marc Simon.
So a huge question for 1 minute, plus your recommendations.
Yes, so I wanted to touch on like what has been raised about the issue of the levy, of this charge. I think when this levy was designed, it was supposed to like provide an incentive for producers to actually change behavior. I mean, it's worrying that it's turning into a tax on countries, actually, that this comes from the general budget. And it's not only in Poland, it's happening in Spain, it's happening in other countries. Therefore, this is a tax that only collects money, but doesn't provide any incentives for producers to change anything. So I think that is quite worrying, because from an incentive perspective, we need to understand that the current EPR system, which basically rewards lightweight packaging, what it's doing is actually indirectly subsidizing packaging made of plastic, because it's the most lightweight, and therefore moving away from circularity. And I think that the full cost coverage for littering is a move in the right direction, but I think we need more there. We need to create incentives for producers to put in the market packaging that is not only lightweight, that is not only not littered, that is also that it should be above all non-toxic, and it should be reusable and fully recyclable. And I don't see these incentives there yet. So my recommendation to conclude would be that we need to look beyond EPR. We need to have incentives in terms of taxation that goes directly. And it's not taxation for plastic, it's taxation against disposability, whether it's glass, whether it's plastic, whether it's Tetra Pak. I mean, what we need to make sure is that we have packaging that is circular. And the current system we have now, I don't think it has the right tools to actually provide the right results. So I would say, like, we need to have a wider conversation that is cross-material and cross-product category to ensure circularity.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Virginia for your recommendations, and also for the global initiatives that go beyond Europe, because plastic is not only the challenge for Europe, but it's a global challenge. So what are the initiatives, global ones, that are being taken?
Yeah, very quickly, perhaps on the global aspect, clearly right. Plastic waste is a global issue, pollution. So collaboration from European industry at the global level, but also certainly also the European Union is also leading in terms of plastic waste at the global level. And we are also working together with the Commission directly on alignment in helping to achieve better global frameworks. Currently, the United Nations is working on a global framework for plastics, and next year they will kick off the negotiations. So there clearly alignment and leadership of the EU is happening and also expected. So that is very exciting. Also in other projects, for instance, in Ocean Clean Sweep, it's a program to end pellet loss, pellet loss, where PlasticsEurope is also the European coordinator. And we're also involved in the World Plastics Council, for instance, a global plastics alliance, which is really in all areas and all regions of the world, helping to reduce marine litter with all kinds of projects and coordination. So these are just a handful of examples on what we are doing also at the global level. In terms of recommendations moving forward, I think I communicated clearly our intentions, our work in progress, where we want to go. I think for the European Commission, EU legislators, and in the context also of today and the European Green Deal, please help us with a consistent regulatory framework. I hear about, and we support the right incentives from a regulatory point of view, pricing point of view, measures or incentives, but they need to be consistent and leading to the same direction. And also, of course, in a strong functioning internal market. Please keep it together also in the implementation phase, so that we have the necessary scale and so that our investments also pay off at that level to ensure our competitiveness remains as high as possible for our industry in Europe. So that is one clear recommendation. And the second one, please let us debate much more in dialogue with value chain partners and also with the NGOs. John Mark, I hear your words. I listen carefully to what you say as a critical NGO, and please keep on challenging us. We need that to move forward. But also at the same time, work with us. I hear you. Yes, it's also reuse. We agree. We can debate with our value chain partners what we can do more in reuse models, for instance. But we still also need the support to make the recycling happening also in chemical recycling. So let's just work on that together, and also, of course, with the Commission, so we can iron that out, and so that the billions that are being invested for the moment will also actually pay off. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Virginia. So, Paulo, Lemos, I would like to ask you a similar question to one asked to Adam JARUBAS about the consumers or citizen responsibility not to have our forests and oceans littered, because it's not only the producers who make the material, as Jean-Marc mentioned. The first is the material, then it comes on how we use it. I would like to ask you also about education initiatives, if there any are taken up by the European Commission for the European citizens as regards, for example, plastic use and waste, and your recommendations.
Well, we are working on awareness raising, and well, I will not claim that it was the European Union that put plastics on the agenda, but it's sure that when we launched the plastic strategy and then the single-use plastic directive, awareness raising in the public increased very much. Our campaign on single-use plastic, and we did a campaign on single-use plastic using, in particular, social media, was the most popular campaign that the Commission launched. Still yesterday, my colleague from communication was saying that it's still the most popular place, the single-use plastic site, let's say, the most popular place in DG Environment. So we raised a lot the awareness of people. The Single-Use Plastic Directive also speaks about the need for member states and for the producers to promote awareness raising of people. But I think with the right information and the right incentives, people can change their behaviors. We saw that with the Plastic Bag Directive. Some people said it will not work. In some countries, for instance, in my country, Portugal, we put a tax of 10 cents in plastic bags, light plastic bags. And in 2 weekends, plastic bags dropped brutally, the use. We were counting on 39 million, assuming that 80% of the population which would shift, but 20 still would buy it. At the end of the year, we had 3 million income from this. People really changed. Well, because of the economic incentive, but also because they understand that they could play a role by avoiding the use of plastic bags. Just one last question in terms of what was already said, in terms of the funds. I remember people in the industry that the resilience fund that we are launching is a fund about resilience, and recycled content is resilience. By using recycled content, we are avoiding the import of products from other countries. So projects that can be presented as good projects could be financed and help our economy to be more competitive and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ostatnie pytanie do pani
And the last question goes to MARLENA. TRYKA, Polish Plastic Converters Union thinks that we'll have some 30 to 100% increase in plastic production, and the cost will be shifted onto the consumers at the end of the day. Can you refer to that and your recommendation or recommendations? Thank you very much indeed. I'll try to answer it swiftly. The fears of the industry related to extra costs that might be associated with these very important regulations that focus on the environment are very much justified. For the questions that we're referring to, plastic tax, that causes lots of fears here. Yes, it's very important because it will help us to limit the cost and will make it possible to create a right system. This needs a properly designed process of producers' extended responsibility. Why is it so important? This is our perception at the ministry. We want to focus not only on financial transfers, but also information and material transfers. So a well-designed system, like deposit system, that the money that you get for returnable plastic packagings and the things that are associated with recycling will largely contribute towards reduction of costs for the industry. Cost reduction, on the one hand, will result, on the other hand, in what we care most about, the greatest amount of recycling in economy. And speaking about the recommendations that you indicated, I cannot forget about saying what Virginia was speaking about. Us, the administration, be it in Poland or in the European Union or global administration industry, find one thing, an overriding challenge: cooperation and collaboration. We need to motivate one another and spur for the action in order to introduce the processes as fast as possible. And what you need to bear in the back of your head is the fact that this should be more of an evolution rather than revolution. So all the aspects that are required for circular economy introduction are feasible and doable, so that the industry and enterprises have enough time to align with the regulations. So once implemented, they are most efficient. So this is my call, my appeal, my recommendation. Thank you very much indeed for this very constructive appeal.
For today, I would like to thank you to all our great speakers, VIRGINIJUS, SINKEVIČIUS, Adam JARUBAS, Virginia JANSSENS, JOAN, MARC, Simon, MARLENA, TRYKA, and PAULO LEMOS for your insightful comments and recommendations. I would also like to thank all our participants for great questions and for being with us. Next week, we'll publish an article both in Polish and in English that will sum up all the most important points that we discussed today as a constructive follow-up. But for now, I wish you all a good Thursday afternoon and see you the next time. Goodbye.